What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Fresh Out of College. Today, Ryota and I are going to discuss the NCAA football and the climate about are they going to play, are they not going to play, and kind of hear more about the updates. So let's get right into it.
Okay, so now let's talk about college football. Drew, what are your updates so far, and let's discuss.
Yeah, there's been big news happening this past few days. A lot of the big conferences like the ACC, Big Ten, Pac-12 are deciding because of COVID that they want to move all their games in-house, so in conference compared to out of conference. So some big games, some notable games, and then we'll talk about as well as more in depthly is UW versus Michigan is now canceled. Alabama versus USC is canceled. Ohio State versus Oregon. So just some of the big ones are now canceled this season due to COVID, and that is a big hit for the game and also for some of these smaller schools as well, which we'll get into. Um, there's also another big news that happened. Stanford announced their plan to cut 11 varsity teams from their program to kind of make up the deficit of the revenue that they will be losing this fall. So the 11 varsity teams that are being cut are the men and women's fencing, field hockey, lightweight rowing, men's rowing, co-ed sailing, women's sailing, synchronized swimming, men's volleyball, wrestling, and squash. These programs collectively won 20 national championships for Stanford and had athletes that won 27 Olympic medals. The school said that the athletic department will now face a $25 million deficit, and that is the reason why they had to cut the 11 sports. So pretty big news. In games are going in conference, and more universities are cutting sports. So any gut reactions from this, Ryota?
I mean, just from the whole sports cutting, I've read and saw some videos of Olympic athletes talking,
Mm-hmm.
In their social media, and you know it's worrisome because many of the star Olympians that we see, like for example, the first name that comes to mind is Katie Ledecky. I forgot what college she swims at, but she made her mark in the Olympics as a young college athlete, or maybe even high school, because when you're in the Olympics, you're usually really young, right? And there's no professional swimming league per se. I mean, you swim independently, but most of your time is through endorsements outside of during your professional career. So I mean, college is a huge part for them, and not being able to have that platform or team and education all mixed into one is really, I think, really tough for Olympic athletes. I feel like Olympic athletes don't get enough credit already. Because they're not a part of NFL or they're not a part of the MLB. They're highly underrated, and they don't get paid as much as you think, right? So I think college education is a huge part of it. But if you can't go to Stanford to play, I think men's volleyball is one of the canceled sports, right? Men's volleyball, then that's really unfortunate. I know one of
Mm-hmm.
my old teammates' dads played. I think he played volleyball at Stanford. But just imagining, I know so many people that play those sports and just not being able to go to Stanford because they don't have that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, I guess they always have other options. Well, if programs don't get canceled, but who knows? It could eventually be eradicated. And what are those athletes going to do? It's a little worrisome, but I mean, that's my first initial gut reaction.
I agree with you, especially because Stanford cut these teams, so that means that they are predicting a huge deficit. And I mean, Stanford is a big school. They have a lot of donors and a lot of people that pay for the athletic program, like put money into it, and yet they are still having to cut 11 programs. The Olympic player that you're talking about, Kate Ledecky, actually went to Stanford.
That's what I thought. Yeah,
a little fun fact there.
Yeah,
I agree with you. And these are also scholarships that players cannot get anymore. And Stanford is a great school academically. So if somebody wants to look more for the academics and maybe do a sport like squash or co-ed sailing and get a scholarship there for their talents won't be able to go to Stanford. But yeah, and then also for smaller schools, we're seeing that due to the non-conference, due to no teams playing at a conference, they are, I think, the most impacted by this, just because so many of their revenue comes from playing these big schools like
Right.
Alabama or
Mhm.
Michigan or UW, just because UW pays a lot of money for these non-conference teams to come, or smaller teams to come and
Mhm.
play. And these schools don't have big contracts, TV contracts, so they are going to have to cut a lot of athletic departments just because they have to make up some money, right? They have to get some money.
Mhm.
So I think what we'll see is, if this season does not happen, and a lot of people are saying that it's highly likely that the season does not happen, we might see some of the smaller schools like New Mexico State, or I don't know, some
Mhm.
FCS schools
Mhm.
might have to drop their program. Like maybe Eastern Washington. I don't know. I don't know. Eastern Washington, I know, is a very good school.
Mhm.
But maybe since they can't play these bigger teams like Alabama, Ohio State, or Oregon, they might not have the revenue um,
Right.
to keep up. So, and then we'll also talk about like the prospects. I mean, it's a huge thing when you
Yeah.
have. It might not be as big for the compared to like NCAA basketball, but it's still a big thing. Like, I mean, you want to see the best of the best play each other,
Mhm.
and the prospects kind of want to prove that they can play with the best of the best.
Mhm.
And if they aren't able to have that, then that's big. I know for one thing, Jake Locker, who played for UW
Mhm.
in 2008 to 2011, I believe, he 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 kind of the team was really bad. The Huskies were really bad, and one of the ways Jake Locker got them on the map was playing these non-conference games, and um, kind of that's how he also learned. And then
Mhm.
he turns out to be one of the uh, top UW quarterbacks ever, and then he gets drafted in the first round by the Tennessee Titans. So
Mhm.
it's definitely a stepping stool for out side competition. And then there will also probably not be any football playoffs, which is a big revenue generating thing, sort of like the
Mhm.
NCAA basketball
Mhm.
tournament.
Mhm.
So if that doesn't happen, I don't know what will go on. Yeah,
Yeah, I
I'll
mean,
end my blurb there.
yeah, I mean, for the as far as the college football playoffs, yeah, I mean, I don't watch college football a whole lot. Maybe I watch some
Mhm.
UW games, but the college football playoffs is something I do watch, because it's hyped up, and why not watch, you know, what the
The
committee
top
thinks
two
are the
best
two
teams,
best
yeah.
teams, 2 4 teams play, right? Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, that'll be kind of sucky. But I mean, yeah, I mean, it was great watching, the two QBs compete last year. Like, when are we gonna ever get to see that again? But going back to the prospects part, yeah, I think the Jake Locker example is really good. But I thought of another example. We all know Cooper Cup,
Hmm.
a proud
Yep.
Washingtonian from Yakima. He went to Eastern Washington University, like you just, the school that you just mentioned. And you're right. I mean, I'm sure the scouts were looking at when he played against the good teams, not just when he played against the conference teams. So it's a major blow to some of the prospects, because obviously you can perform super well in your low level league, but what really matters to scouts is how you perform against the Alabamas, the Washingtons, the Oregons,
Hmm.
and stuff like that. So yeah, it might be a huge loss. Like, if Cooper Cup were playing for the Eastern Washington right now, like currently, who knows, he might have not been drafted. He might have taken the long road, the undrafted road, and then really prove himself. If he wasn't seen.
Or maybe
Um,
he doesn't even get that platform.
exactly right. So that's yeah. So it's just an issue for some prospects, and I feel bad. Like, yeah. Um, but again, I think we're gonna see this maybe even happen in basketball, because basketball is a winter sport. We saw this a little bit with this spring for baseball. Some players' seasons
Hmm.
got cut short, so their you know prospect or showcasing moment was gone too. So I mean, that's another reason why people were skeptical of Emerson Hancock. But I think
Mhm,
after reviewing his video, I think he was a great pick for the Mariners. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be bad for the lower level teams and the players who are really trying to make a mark.
mhm,
Um, I guess as far as like a Pac-12 team, I'm not super concerned because I still feel like the Pac-12 and all these leagues are still big enough. Like, yeah, we don't get to watch UW play Michigan, the huge, school, and Harbaugh's there, and that's be fun to watch. But I mean, as far as prospects at UW, like I don't think it hurts them too much. If the
mhm.
season continued this way. But yeah, what are your thoughts?
I think the Cooper Cup one was definitely a better one, and I kinda wanna throw more names out there just that are in the NFL and kinda
Mhm.
sticked. Jimmy Garoppolo went to Northern Illinois,
Yeah,
so a smaller school. Carson Wentz went to North Dakota State, which is a smaller school as
yeah,
well. And a lot of these players, like you said, need to have these bowl games and non-conference or out of conference games to
hmm,
kind of showcase their talent. So those are some other players. Um, for me, being a UW fan, I think it hurts that we're not playing Michigan because this game was scheduled, I think, 8 years ago or
oh,
10 years.
okay,
So it's been a long time coming. And what we just talked about, I think 2 podcasts ago, is these teams that play out of conference, it takes a while because, I mean, it's far in advance.
hmm,
I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think Ohio State and Alabama are just had a just, agreed on a home and away series, and that's in 10 years. So it
hmm,
takes a while. So I think as being a fan of UW and probably Alabama not playing USC, it's a huge, huge loss because I mean, you never really get to play any of these big teams because it's not
yeah,
like basketball where you have like, I don't know, 30 games. You only
hmm,
have so many. And
right,
yeah, it hurts that way.
hmm,
But yeah. So I don't know. I think there's also a lot of teams are also maybe looking maybe to start in the spring instead of the fall.
hmm,
So we could see that happening. Um, I kind of feel bad for the seniors, like you said for baseball, they were cut short, and maybe the seniors won't have that year of kind of like coming back. Okay, I want to come back for the school. I want to play for the school, and then not having that ability to do that,
hmm,
which is it's kind of a bummer.
hmm,
Um, but yeah, that's what's happening in college football. We not a lot of it's not progressing as fast as the NBA or NFL. So it's kind of like once every 2 weeks we get like an
hmm.
update on what happens. Um,
I mean, it's hard
and
because there's so many teams, right?
yeah,
And they're all separate organizations that are kind of under a league, but then they're under the NCAA.
hmm,
But so it's very it's so processed. There's a lot of, and the other thing is they have to worry about school too, right? So I
hmm,
think people forget. People are like, "Oh, we want college football back," but if there's no school, there can't be college football because then they
yeah,
would be non, or they would not be student athletes. They'd just be athletes, right?
yeah.
The whole thing about.
Hopefully they go virtual. Hopefully the
Well, actually,
campuses.
let's talk about it. So if they go virtual,
Hmm,
I guess yeah, football could continue because it's still school.
yeah,
Would that be better or worse?
I think looking at it without going into without actually looking at it, kind of
Hmm.
just like um, kind of just barely looking at it. I think if there's no schooling, I mean, if it's just virtual and everybody has to go home and um, do their school there, compared to everybody on campus, I think it's a better deal, right? Because there's less players, there's less students there.
Right.
Um, Athletes have the campus to themselves. They could probably quarantine themselves in one area of the campus,
Hmm.
but I don't know. It would just be It'll be interesting. It's tough because like you said, it's like technically all voluntary, there's no contracts. These players are not getting paid. So, you know, why would I want to play if I'm risking my health for something that is very contagious
Hmm.
and I don't get anything out of it except for like, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
Because because coaches and universities can't force these players to play.
mhm,
There's no okay, if you're not going to play, I'm going to withhold this amount of money.
Mhm.
That just doesn't happen.
Mhm.
And obviously, they're not going to withhold the education. I
Mhm.
mean, I hope not.
I mean, I
But
wonder one thing. So my brother goes to Beloit, and I think what my
mhm,
mom said, they got an email from the school saying that they might do a system where you can opt in or out to come to campus and take or go to classes in person, or you can stay home and do it online.
mm,
So I wonder what, I guess for fall sport, because again, we're not only talking about football, we're talking about all fall sports, right? I guess.
mhm,
I wonder what they might do is allow fall sport athletes to do classes in person, and then all non-athletes to do online.
yeah,
Because you're going to have to be on campus regardless for
mhm,
sports. So I wonder if they
exactly.
might do that. But then again, there
I
might be some
think,
backlash from non-athletes saying, "Why do they get to be on campus? But why can't we?" So
well, I think at that point, the NCAA will be like, "Do you know who we are?"
yeah,
They have that power in the
yeah,
sense that the NCAA is notorious for getting what they want.
yeah. But
But
I mean,
I
it'll be interesting to see because I mean, yeah, I don't know how. I mean, all the athletes are have already been taking class before, so it's like not like they're going to change the schedule too much, right? The
mhm.
schedule's going to be pretty similar, but yeah, I don't
So
know.
I think they would all do virtual just because I think it would be unfair to the teachers, and I don't think it's possible for the teachers to do virtual classes and also in-person classes, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah. I don't know what yeah, you brought up a good point about the education aspect and, like, how they're gonna deal with that. I think people are focused on, h like, how it's actually gonna work in terms of, okay, you have 135 players you have to
Mhm.
deal with, so there's a lot to deal with for the
And
NCAA, and
and
there's
so also my question is, colleges teams are already doing camp, right?
they're doing voluntary camp, yeah.
Okay, because I was driving by the UW the other day, and
Mhm,
Montley Boulevard's right where the stadium is, and I
mhm.
saw a line of players getting ready to walk inside to the stadium.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So I mean, the other question is, yeah, why are people already practicing without all of this being set yet?
Mhm.
That's another worry that I have. Just doesn't seem fair to the student athletes. Because I
So
mean, the
I
football,
think
there's no training camp yet because they have to agree first, right? So I don't think it's fair to the college football athletes to, or fall athletes too, if they come back to campus. I don't know if they come back this early or not, but is it really fair for them?
you
You know,
mean for the
the
football players
players
or
that they have to
what
come back and they haven't even agreed on what the season's happening or they decide what the
yeah,
conference is, but I don't know. It doesn't seem right to me.
I think it's so what I've heard Michigan State do is I think they've agreed that they're gonna have 5 players in a group and then practice that way, so it's gonna be split up, and I think it's based on I think it's only, like I don't think it's gonna be widespread like the NFL or the MLB, like, this is
Hmm.
what the protocol is gonna be. Um, I think teams are gonna run their practices the way they want to. I don't know. So, I don't know, because technically they're not really I mean, the pa the the Alabama is different than how UW is gonna run their program, right? Because it's in a different state, they have different regulations. So
That's another question. How does
so it's gonna
that
be interesting.
doesn't that tamper the level of play too?
Well, I think it will depend on how many hours. I think you're still gonna be limited to, like,
The
okay,
NCAA
it
hour
might only
rule and
be
how many practices a week kind of thing.
yeah, but I think it's gonna be interesting because you might have to see, like, maybe Arizona can't start because the state is still under lockdown, so they might
Yeah, so
have to
that's
come up
another
with
interesting
a
thing
thing.
too, right? Because you're right. The states have different laws. We're not all bound by the same federal law as far as this pandemic.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, like maybe UW and Oregon and Washington State will get to play, but ASU and Arizona might not.
Well,
That
this is
that
yeah.
could be very possible, actually.
I really don't know what like, yeah, and it's coming up. I mean, August is right around the corner, and that's usually when they start,
Hmm.
at least practicing. We'll leave the discussion there. and then we'll come back next week or 2 weeks from now or whenever the date comes closer and talk more about it once we get more concrete details on it. But yeah, all right, thanks for joining, guys, and until next week. See ya.